Most interview advice tells you what questions to prep for. Practice your interview answers. Memorize your resume bullets. Be ready to tell me about yourself. While that's good advice, we're going to talk more about some of the nitty gritty stuff that's going to give you more of an edge to help you get that offer. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how I'd actually prepare, what each round of the interview is actually testing for, because it's not the same thing at every stage. The one response pattern that works when you hit a question you can't answer, and the one response that quietly kills your chances. And what the team actually says about you in the room after you leave, and why the last thing I'd prep for has nothing to do with SQL, dashboards, or being technical. I've been in healthcare analytics since 2011. I currently work as a business analyst consultant at a top Fortune 500 healthcare company. Over time, I've sat over many hiring panels over multiple cycles. I've reviewed resumes, screened video interviews, led group interviews, designed and administered technical tests, sat in deliberation rooms, and I've also directed a competitive hip hop dance team at UCI for 4 years, where I personally got to evaluate a lot of people over auditions. So this would be 50, over 100 people every year because we had 2 year dance cycles. And I've hired freelancers. I've hired for friends' startup companies for Facebook ads. I've done it for personal businesses. So I've seen what it takes to stand out across multiple industries outside of just data analytics. And right now, I'm helping a member of our community through their interview prep. They're on their second, and what it's seeming is going to be their final interview, or at least some of the final stages. So some of the advice that I was giving them keeps mapping back to the same patterns that I've observed across a lot of the hiring cycles that I've been a part of. So I wanted to share it here because I think it applies to anyone that's prepping for a data analyst interview right now. So if you're a career switcher trying to break into healthcare analytics, this channel is built for you because I'm on a mission to help 10,000 people break in. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss these weekly videos where I give actionable tips of how to break in. So let's break this down. Here's something that most people don't think about. Every round of the interview is typically, whether consciously or unconsciously, is going to be testing something different. Most candidates treat the round the same story, same energy, same answers, and you want to be able to adapt. And I'm going to walk you through what's happening at each stage, because round one is with the recruiter or the hiring manager, and it could actually be before round one. The questions that they're answering is simple. Does this person meet the minimum requirements? And can I filter them out before taking them to the next stage? Or if you are a great fit for what the hiring manager is looking for, you want to be able to explain that your skills fit what is needed by the role. Can you explain why you're here? Do you have enough of the right experience to be worth bringing in for the next conversation? This is going to be a filtered conversation and not the decision. So if I were prepping for this round, I would have a clean 90-second introduction, not my life story, because you don't have the luxury or the time as an in-person interview or a next level interview, virtual interview, where you're talking to the team, the hiring manager in depth. Here, they're just looking at, okay, here are all the different questions we have inside our mind about how they fit. I would think about it in this way. I would be where I've been, what analytics work that I've done, indirectly or directly, and how it fits to this role specifically, and why I'll be an asset right away. And why this role matters is something that people don't realize, because I've seen candidates on video interviews who are clearly qualified, but they just gave a generic why for why they wanted this position. And they also didn't address potential red flags and weaknesses inside them as a candidate. So one of the things that you want to think about is this person is just looking for any type of job. And once they get it and once they get a better opportunity, they might just leave. They're just looking at it as a stepping stone, and that creates turnover risk in the hiring manager's mind, and then they're going to probe on it. So next one is going to be roughly round two is going to be with the hiring manager. This could be directly in person. It could be another phone screen with the hiring manager, or it could be the in-person interview with the hiring manager and then typically the team or someone who's senior on the team, or a mix of both. Or it could be the technical interview too, depending on how they structure the interview. So it depends on the organization, but it moves around. Just be prepared for a lot of interviews, or be prepared for what it could take on. So the question here is going to shift of like how you prepare. It's no longer does this person meet our minimum requirements. It's now, will they relieve the work inside our department, or will they just create more work, or how long will it take to get this person up to speed? Based on their resume and the portfolio projects, do they actually have the technical skill to do the work, or is it just overinflated? And then so when we dig into the nitty gritty in the questions for the role, is their skills overinflated and they can't actually do the work once we dive into what is needed? So now this is going to get a little bit more scenario based. You might get more technical questions and more implementation questions on top of like the work ethic and work scenario questions and behavioral questions. They're going to pull from your resume, relate the experience to the actual work of the role. How would you approach this data problem? How would you approach this problem in general? Walk me through how you would handle this reporting request. How would you validate something before sending it out? They want to see how you think through the work, not just the concept or that your portfolio looks nice. How did you actually build it? Did you actually build it yourself? And then it's questioning everything to just prove and show that, okay, they're a competent and skilled candidate that can do the work that we need. And I was typically the person that was brought in at this stage. And what was going through my mind the entire time was typically this: if I give a person a project or a task tomorrow morning or this week, am I going to get something that I can trust? And this is also once they get up to speed and they understand our systems and our data. Or is the team going to have to take on additional work to redo it? How proactive are they? How well do they communicate? Are they going to be able to handle stakeholders and communications? So those are just questions inside my mind and other people's minds while these interviews are happening. So if I were prepping for round 2, in general, I would just have a story bank of all my best stories that are evidence for the questions that they're asking. Because when they ask questions, there's always going to be an underlying meaning behind it. And it's also, you can just always associate it to risk and your fit. If you always just think about it that way, then you can pick out the best stories to mitigate your risk, like them trusting you. Do you have enough skills? Are you a good worker? How hard do you work? Are you proactive? Can you do the role? And then giving a story, because stories are what makes us more memorable in people's minds while we're interviewing based on the neuroscience. So being able to tell it through a story, you're able to, and it's going to be a technical story, has a project, you make sure that you write and sit down to have those stories inside your back pocket so that you can tell the best stories that will get you a higher chance of getting hired. Have them map to the specific responsibilities in the job description and what is the best scenario and best story that you can tell. So you don't want to have generic stories that you're telling. These are going to be stories where the context, the action, and the result connect directly to what the team needs you to do and why it's open. So I wouldn't want to know exactly which experiences to share and why before I walked in to address all the different problems that come up and me and my value as a candidate. So that's how I would prepare. And then I'll also prepare based on the job description and then also the content that the team is posting and the director and the hiring manager and the company itself. I would look into all of it. And then I would get a good feel of like, what are the current bottlenecks of the company? What they care about? What does my direct team and cross-functional teams care about? So then I can find the better story of my own personal experience to better suit and cater to what they are looking for and to mitigate the risk that they see in me. So then I would share a more technical story. I would have the direct proof and the numbers that show I can handle the pressure. I've taken on this much responsibilities and I've executed on time for a consistently long time. And I show that I'm a top performer that would be an asset to their team. And then round 3, depending on the company, could be with upper management. Could be a director, could be the VP, could be a decision maker of the hiring manager. Now the question is going to shift. Now it's going to be final approval usually. Does this person belong on my team? Will they be an asset moving forward? For at least that's operation. You want to think like a director or VP. They're thinking operationally. In my experience, most directors at this stage are confirming what the hiring manager has already told them. They will, and any of the concerns that they personally have. So it'll depend based on what upper management you interview with and their own personalities. They want to see the person behind the resume. There's going to be culture fit. There's going to be communication. There's going to be confidence. There's going to be fit within the team as a whole. They might ask behavioral technical questions depending on how on hands they are and where they came from. Are they more technical? Did they come from an engineering role, an analytics role? Then they might ask more technical questions based on what they see on your resume or your portfolio, just to get an idea of how you think. And again, are you the way that you're presenting yourself? Is that true to what you're presenting, and can you do the roles, and you actually have the technical skills that you say you have? They're really evaluating whether you'd be a strong addition to the department. So they'll also probably explain how the team works, bring up any concerns that they have, set expectations. So if I were prepping for this role, I'd shift from the technical stories to strong questions as well. You want to have strong questions in general, but a director is going to value strong questions, being proactive, not what does this team do? You should already know that based on based on your previous interactions. Now the questions need to go a little bit deeper and show what does success look like in my first 90 days. So this would be something you would share with the hiring manager, but you could also share it from a director level. It's like, okay, from your perspective, what would the success in this role for the first 90 days be? And then you could ask other questions, deeper questions like, what are the biggest data quality challenges that your team faces right now? And then these are going to be questions that show that you started to already think about the work. But in asking those questions, you're setting yourself up for an answer, because they'll present the problems, and then they'll ask, how would you solve that? Or what would you do because of that? So you think you're like setting yourself up for these questions. So you have to have answers that will be impressive to a director. So make sure to always to have those prepared as well, and then so that you can nail this interview and fit what the director is looking for. So the other thing that I would do on top of this, and what most people miss, is the later you get inside the interview process, it's going to be less about what you know, and it's going to be more about who you're going to be working with. The later stages, it's close. They're trying to choose between the last remaining candidates. So the panel is going to be judging every interaction, whether they realize it or not, consciously or subconsciously. And it's going to be on the entire process. On one question that it'll probably be in the back of the mind, would I enjoy working with this person every day compared to the other candidates? And enjoy working is subjective. It depends on who you're working with. You could be working with a lot of technical engineers who enjoyed working just means you are the most technologically advanced and you won't give them extra work. Others, project managers, you communicate, you get your deadlines done on purpose, you're proactive. It depends. So this is more of a feel of the different team and the different culture and what culture they have existing. This is one that you're just going to have to feel out. And it also just depends on, do you want to be a part of that team as well? And it also goes deeper than just, do I like this person? It's the personalities, the skill sets, the strengths, the weaknesses that are already on the team. It's who's the best synergistic fit, because the team already has their people. They have their dynamics. They have their set processes. They're looking for people who complement what they have, not just who's qualified, and not just who's likable, but who fills the gap and the need that they have right away and in the best fit. And here's what also makes it a little harder, is that each person on the panel is running their own calculation based on their own role and where they sit. So the technical team member is thinking about hand-holding risk, how much work, additional work is this going to take me when I'm already swamped with a bunch of projects? If something breaks or they need work or need help, do I have the time to actually take this person for us to take this person on? can can this person do the work, or is it going to come back to me? Someone in a coordination role like project manager is evaluating their communication skills, their ability to handle last minute changes, whether they can deliver on time. And then the hiring manager is thinking about management overhead and operational overhead. Are they independent? Are they proactive? Will they communicate when things go wrong? Or will they again just create more work instead of solving problems? That is the reason why this role is open in the first place. So it's nuanced. If you can read the room and understand what each person across from you actually cares about, then you can adjust how you present your experience in real time. So that is just better communication and knowing how to speak to your audience. Now, the single most important thing that I would prep for is not a specific question, it's going to be a situation. Sometime in some point in the interview, you're going to hit something you don't know. It might be a tool you never use. It might be a scenario you never face, a question that takes you outside your comfort zone. This is not by accident, or typically not by accident. Sometimes these questions are there specifically to see how you handle pressure, especially on things that you don't know. And when it happens, there's going to be two paths that you can take. Path A is what most candidates do. They freeze. They go quiet. They have silent stretches. They're in their head trying to think of something and nothing comes out. And the panel is watching someone under pressure, not knowing how to handle the pressure. They're not even trying to communicate. And in my experience across multiple hiring panels, candidates who went silent when they hit something they don't know always come across weaker than the candidates who just talk through their thinking, even if they don't know it as well, because they are better communicators. Usually, it depends on the scenario. If it's tactful silence, we're just like, oh, I just need some time to think about it. Let me think about it really quick. Cool. Then they think about it, they think through their processes, and then versus just the people who just shut down and they don't say anything at all. Because that is a indicator of how you're going to handle pressure situations later. Yes, this is already high pressure, but this is just a indicator of what could happen. So be prepared for a high pressure situation and being able to handle those questions. Because even if you don't know how to answer it, you want to talk through your thinking of how you would be able to get the answer. This is also showing you your communication skills, how proactive you are, how resourceful you are, your problem solving skills. Because that's the second path. Path B is what I'd coach someone to do. Acknowledge the gap. You don't want to pretend, you don't want to lie, and then immediately show how you're going to close it. Something like, I'm not familiar with that specific area, but here's how I would go about learning it. I've been upskilling outside my day job to make the career switch. So if I ran into anything like this where I'm lacking, I'm going to keep studying outside of work to make sure I can help the team and contribute as fast as possible. Then you're going to back it up, share a story where you weren't technical enough for something, but then you caught up fast. Career switchers, this is going to be your advantage if you frame it right. You've already proved that you can learn new things outside of work because you're already doing it. You're trying to switch careers. That's your story. Lean into it. Don't hide the gap. You're going to use that. And if you can take it one step further and explain that how you have a system, and this is personally what I would do, is I personally have a system for learning things. And directors and at this level, they're going to love systems. They're going to love processes because they can measure it, they can improve it, they can figure out what's wrong. And if there's ever an error, you just fix the system. So when you say that you have a system, that perks a lot of their ears up, especially when they're system oriented, most of them. Then I'm going to say that I have this system, and that's going to change the energy and how they perceive this. When there's people who have established processes and systems, they come across more as job ready. It alleviates the fear that you have. There's a lot of hand holding to do because before you're up to speed in helping the team. Because directors especially love hearing someone who thinks in systems because it means you're operating, you're not just reacting. So one thing that I would add here too is this is something that's coming up a lot because if you mention AI as part of how you learn, and you should because now it's a competitive edge, just know that it's a double-edged sword currently. Because interviews are starting to worry that candidates can only do the job with AI. So the way that I would frame it is I would have AI makes me better and faster, but it doesn't replicate and replace my foundational skills. I can do the work without AI. AI just helped me learn faster. It accelerates how quickly I get better and how quickly and how fast I can be productive. And that distinction matters right now. So the other way that I will also think about it is the technical interview is going to be a mini simulation of day one or different tasks that you're going to do on the job, or skills representing important skills that are needed for the role. And if you hit something where you don't know at work, do you go silent and hope that nobody notices? You typically don't, because you need to get that work done. So what do you usually do? You have to communicate to your boss. You can reach out to the senior analyst, to the senior technical people, and ask questions. On an interview, you want to ask, what are the restrictions of what I could do at this point? But first, I would say this is how I'd learn with my systems. But outside of that, what is within the scope of how do I figure this out? That'll depend on the answer that I give you. Because if it's okay for me to reach out to the senior technical people to ask questions, what I would do is I'd ask questions because they're the ones who know the data, the processes the best. If they're busy and I can't ask them, then I'm going to fall back on my learning system and plan. Here's how I'd learn. This is how I'd learn with AI. This is how I research. And then this is how I get up to speed. And that's how I've been learning outside of my day job. So whatever learning system that you have, I would have that in my back pocket, so that if this question does come up, you have a readily available answer to when you don't know anything. Because the panel is going to be watching you answer this in real time, and oftentimes it's going to be how you communicate and how you position your answer that is going to make the difference. If you've ever walked out of the interview and wondered what they were saying about you inside the room, I will give you a general idea based on just my experience overall, my whole career in all the different parts and industries, because I've been in that room, and not just corporate hiring, dance, deliberations. I've done and freelancers and the hiring for businesses. What we would do, and I'll just use the dance example because I feel like this is one of the ones where we get a different perspective. After every dance audition cycle, the directors would sit and go through every candidate. It would start simple. Someone would say, okay, what do you guys think? And then from there, it would just be an honest conversation. There are some teams who have a more structured way of deliberating through people. We had like a list, and then we would have scores, and then we'd look at the scores. But then once we had the scores and then we narrowed it down to our final piles, that's when we started to have these honest conversations of what we thought and who we wanted on the team, and who that person wanted versus this person, and then who got the final spot. Then this is where people would start making their various pitches. Depending on the team, depending on the company, there could be no scorecard. But I've seen, and what I've observed is the feelings are the same of how they try to work through the decisions. Because I saw the same thing on something similar on the corporate hiring panels as well. The conversation becomes more human than people expect. And by the final round, here's the truth. Everyone is roughly qualified. They're good at different things. They made it to the final rounds due to various strengths and weaknesses. Now, that's why they're all in that final room, in that final deliberation. The decision comes down to who made the team feel like they belonged and would be an asset to the team. When it gets close and you've got 2 or 3 candidates and only one spot, then people start making their cases. I think this person would fit better because, and then that's how you would get a vote. The highest voted person makes the cut, or would we present our cases, and then the hiring manager would just make their final deliberations, or depending on if it was close or not. When I prep for an interview, I don't just prep for answers. I prep to be someone the team wants in that room every day. And that's a different type of preparation. And it's the part that most interview advice completely skips, because you have different risk about you as a candidate, especially from someone who's cold. You want to be able to address that. You want to also be able to address that you're going to be proactive. You're going to do your work. You're technical enough to take off this work off of the entire team and make it better. By you getting hired, you make the team stronger and you make it easier for everyone else to do their work. You want to start thinking in those ways. What can I add? How can I make myself a stronger, more competitive candidate in this way? So that's the shift that I would make. And if you're prepping for interviews right now and you want to know where to focus, I'm coaching career switchers through this exact process in the community right now, which is the AI Healthcare Analyst Lab. So check it out. Link is in the description below. So if that's something, if you want help breaking into healthcare analytics, So just join. There's a promo right now going on, a 7-day free trial. So check it out for free and see if it fits. Now, one of the things that I will also talk about, and it's one of the strongest things that I've ever seen a candidate do, walked into an interview with a physical portfolio and multiple copies, one for each person that was inside the panel. And inside was what you would expect: a resume, cover letter, projects, full written explanations, certificates, and then something that I personally haven't seen before within a hiring context. It was character testimonials in the form of testimonial emails, awards, uh, reviews from colleagues, that person's character and their work ethic. All redacted. All of this is redacted where it doesn't share any confidential business information or give away any business secrets, which is what you have to do. You make sure that you're legally compliant. But through just reading that, that was impressive because I've never seen anything like that before. And it was impressive that we all were able to have a copy. And that left a lasting impression on me to this very day that I've implemented into my own interviews. But when you see proof, you see the actual emails of people that they worked with printed out, that hits differently than someone just talking in an interview that they're detail oriented or that they're a top performer. A colleague, customers, clients now saying it is a bigger proof point. And this is something that you could personally do right now. Just make sure to redact the information, sanitize it, and make it legally compliant. Don't share any business secrets. Bring it, just print it. It's worth the investment to have that. And it's going to take maybe a weekend to be able to build everything and present it in a way that looks professional, but it's that kind of tangible proof that sticks in a room after you leave. Now, the last piece of advice of how I'd prep isn't technical at all. It's going to be the research. And it's the kind that most people don't do. Most candidates will just Google the company, they'll read the about page, they'll skim recent press releases, maybe that, and then call it a day. That's the floor that you have to hit, not the ceiling. What I actually coach people to do and in the community is first I would research all the different people you're interviewing with, not just the company. LinkedIn is right there. Look at their career path. Well, the person I was helping with the member recently with their prep was we found the hiring manager had spent 20 years in a completely different field before transitioning into analytics. That means the hiring manager knows what it means to switch careers. So they'll relate to that and the hustle that it takes. Also, my member doesn't need to point that out into an interview. They know they can just tell their story authentically and bring those parts out, and the hiring manager would recognize the patterns of being proactive and learning on the fly because they went through the same thing. That's the kind of insight that helps change how you prep, where you can go from generic answers to a conversation with a real person whose background you already know. In our dance auditions, there would be candidates who came to the workshops before the auditions. They introduced themselves to the directors a month in advance. They showed that they wanted this team and not just any team. They wanted to be on our team. They're the ones who got remembered. The corporate version of this is going to be that LinkedIn research, the company research, the job description mapping, and then walking in with questions that prove that you already started thinking about the work. And then before you get brought into an interview, introducing yourself to the hiring manager and then starting to get yourself and them familiar with you before you get into the interview. So that is things that you can do before you get into the interview. And last, the last thing I would prep has nothing to do with SQL and answering questions. This is going to be all about interview presence. All the technical prep in the world doesn't land if you walk in radiating nervous energy where you can barely communicate. So for it's okay to be nervous. You should just accept that you're going to be nervous, but you're going to fall back to your level of preparation. So here's what I would work on the days before my interview. Before I walk into the building, I'm taking one slow, deep breath from my diaphragm, not from my chest, and I'm not making it shallow. I'm just having it so my belly expands. So this can directly calm your nervous system. You're going to slow your heart rate down, and it's invisible from the outside, but it's the fastest ways to help you go from anxious to calming your nervous system. Because when you can calm your nervous system, your interview gets better because you have access to your higher levels of thinking, your creative thinking. Because when you're in fight or flight, you lose your creative thinking. But if you prepared and you prepared to when there's going to be pressure situations, you'll be able to fall back on your level of preparation. So that's why it's important to prepare for pressure situations. And then first impressions matter as well. So when I shake someone's hand, I want to have a firm grip, warm smile already. When our hands meet, direct eye contact. I want to say my name clearly, and I want to consciously register their name when they say it so I can use their name during the conversation and at the end. Most people hear a name and they immediately forget about it because they're already thinking about the next thing to say, or they're just nervous and they don't think about it ahead of time. Remembering names and using them is a rare social skill that will get noticed, because one of people's favorite words is their name. And this is going to be a big one. Is I wouldn't wait until the interview to practice being social. The number one mistake that people make is the interview is the first time that they're going to be outgoing and warm and confident. So of course it's going to feel unnatural. You're building a habit under the highest stakes conditions. So what I would do is earlier in the week, I would just start warming myself up to prepare for the interview. I would walk when I'm walking around in like a public place, I would just hold eye contact a little bit longer with the cashier or the server or the waitress or the waiter. And then just project a little bit more warmth in my voice when I greet a coworker. I would practice my introductions loud 3 times and not inside my head. I would record myself. The social ease that interviews describe as being personal is mostly just practice, comfort, and skills. These are skills that you can replicate. You just need to practice them more. The repetition of this behavior that used to feel unnatural and uncomfortable, you can keep practicing till it feels more comfortable, until it feels more natural. Being a good communicator is just a separate skill that most people don't practice, but it matters just as much as any technical skill for getting hired. It's being able to read the room, relate to your audience, and then adjust. And that takes reps. So those reps don't start the day of the interview. They start the day that you start deciding you're going to interview more and work on this skill. So that's how I'd prep, not just the technical side, but round by round awareness. So if this helped, and if you have any further questions, because there's a whole lot more that I can dive into more videos. So just leave a comment below. What are other questions, or what are other ways that you prep for an interview that have helped out significantly? And just wanted to share this video because I've had both perspectives and currently working with a member right now and helping them get to the next level. So the next time that you walk out an interview and you wonder what they are saying about you, now you have some idea. It's a conversation and the question they're answering is simpler than you think. Do we want this person on our team? So just think about it that way. Query responsibly, and I'll see you in the next video. Watch this next video right now because YouTube thinks you're going to like it.